All right, if you would stand or remain standing in honor of the word of the Lord for our primary reading of it this morning. This is the most important words that we will say in this service. If you are able to stand. Go to the Gospel of John, chapter number 8. We're going to look at verses 12 through 21 today. John 8, 12 through 21. We've been moving verse by verse through this book since December of last year. God willing, we will get through these verses today. This is the word of the Lord. Again, Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So the Pharisees said to him, You are bearing witness about yourself. Your testimony is not true. Jesus answered, Even if I do bear witness about myself, my testimony is true. For I know where I came from and where I am going, but you do not know where I come from and where I am going. You judge according to the flesh. I judge no one. Yet even if I do judge, my judgment is true. For it is not I alone who judge, but I and the Father who sent me. In your law, it is written that the testimony of two people is true. I am the one who bears witness about myself, and the Father who sent me bears witness about me. They said to him, therefore, where is your Father? Jesus answered, You know neither me nor my Father. If you knew me, you would know my Father also. These words he spoke in the treasury as he taught in the temple, but no one arrested him because his hour had not yet come. So he said to them again, I am going away, and you will seek me, and you will die in your sin. Where I am going, you cannot come. Amen. You may be seated. The sun is a massive yellow dwarf star that contains over 99% of the solar system's mass. Its diameter is large enough to fit 1.3 million Earths inside of it. It's a ball of hydrogen, which is a gas element found in water, and helium, which is the gas that makes balloons float, and your voice sound really weird when you breathe it in. It burns the hot color of white and is over 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit on the surface, reaching an internal temperature of 27 million degrees Fahrenheit in the middle. Not quite sure who took the thermometer to the middle of the sun, but that's what they say. Its powerful gravitational force holds Earth in its place and heats the entire planet, taking just 8 minutes and 20 seconds for its light to reach the earth. If the sun were to all of a sudden not exist, if it were to implode, we'd have 8 minutes and 20 seconds to say goodbye to all of our loved ones. The earth would plunge into freezing temperatures, reaching absolute zero. We'd be thrown off our orbit and spin uncontrollably into space, colliding with any and every object in our path. The earth's surface would be completely frozen in a week, and within a year, the oceans would completely freeze. The atmosphere itself would be so cold that it would condense and fall to the ground. Without a doubt, the sun is the most significant source of light in the physical material universe. Theoretically, without it, we would be dead unless God intervened. We need it to live, and ironically, at the same time, it's very dangerous to us. Not only is it extremely dangerous to actually physically move closer to the sun, but just staying out in the sun for hours with exposed skin can cause severe burns. I remember one time when I was 20 and stupid, I went out with a group of friends to Big Hill Lake in Labette County, Kansas, and it was a cloudy day outside, and apparently I skipped school on the day that the science teacher taught us that UV rays came through clouds. And so we were out there without sunblock on because, it was cloudy. And we swam for about 12 hours, almost without a break. It was a wonderful day until it wasn't. I had third-degree burns all over my face, my shoulders, my back. I couldn't wear a shirt, literally couldn't wear a shirt for a week because those third-degree burns was full of oozing blisters. And just air touching my skin hurt. And so if I didn't have constant ice-cold air blowing on me, I was in a lot of pain. The worst part is when I began to heal, usually a sunburn, when it heals, you itch a little bit on your skin. I must have burnt down to the muscle because when it began to heal, I started having muscle contraction all over my back nonstop. It was miserable. So now I'm the guy, anytime I go to the pool or the lake, I'm putting like 70 SPF on. I've got a hat. I'm wearing a shirt because I have committed to never go through that again. The sun is not just dangerous to be exposed to for long periods of time, it's dangerous to look at. You risk possible permanent damage to your vision if you look at it. Even if you look at it and you're like, oh, it doesn't hurt, there's nothing that's happened, it will burn the back part of your eye before you know it and leave you visually impaired and sometimes possibly even blind. The sun is so significant to us that people over centuries, over the existence of humanity, have turned to the sun and made it an object of worship. The Babylonians worshiped the sun god Shamash. The Assyrians worshiped Shapshu. The Egyptians worshiped the sun and called it the god Re. It was considered Baal or Bel by the Phoenicians, Molech by the Ammonites, and Hadad by the Syrians. Israelites in the rebellion at times would take on the pagan worship practices of identifying the sun as deity. Most notably, this occurred even in the temple during the time of the prophet Ezekiel. The men that were in the temple turned their back to the altar of God and faced the east, signifying their adoration for the sun as God. Sounds silly to us 21st century Westerners, but you have to transport yourself back in time to see why this was a temptation and why this was so significant. Light is very available to us in the electricity age. And I know this will surprise some of you, but electricity hasn't always been around. And in fact, it's not really been around for that long, okay? Everything that happened during the day really rose and fell with the light. There's no street light keeping you safe as you go for your night jog. And often, the only type of light you had at night was the reflection of the sun bouncing off of the moon. Like water in the desert, light was scarce. And it was really the driving force to how life worked. And it kind of makes sense in the flesh, of course not spiritually and eternally, but it makes sense in the flesh why someone would put their hope in it. But it's not just that. Think of all that the sun and sunlight does for us. I mean, it sustains life. Without it, we would freeze. It produces energy for plants to produce their own food, which keeps the cycle of life going. It provides vitamins for our body that we need. It reveals truth. Without light, we wouldn't know where anything is at all. We would be colliding into each other. We would be colliding into things. Everything that you can see with your eyes is light bouncing off that object and into your eye, and then your brain interprets the light into an image. Have you ever got up in the middle of the night and tried to find your way to the bathroom? How unsuccessful have you been at doing that? It's pretty complicated, especially if you're like me and you're too lazy to turn lights on or you don't want to wake anybody up and you're just stumbling through the house, right? And you stub your toe. Here lies Johnny, tried to pee in the middle of the night and stubbed his toe and now he's dead. Like that's this sort of thing that it could be really complicated, right? So what happens is the light reveals the truth. It also aids joy. If you travel to areas of the world where it's dark for long periods of time, the depression rate skyrockets. Many people suffer from something called seasonal depression, even here in this area where you go through like the winter and months where you have less access to sunlight, and they will go through seasonal, where they have literal brain chemical changes that bring on seasonal depression. So light can affect mood, happiness, and personal well-being, all sorts of things. The great irony is that light is all these things, but it also is the most dangerous thing. While it sustains life, if you get too close to it, it will take your life. While it reveals truth, the truth that it reflects is not always something that you want to see. Sometimes when you turn on the light brighter, you see something you don't want to see. You're looking in the mirror and you're like, oh, I gained a few lbs. You're looking in the mirror and you're like, oh, there's a new pimple on my nose, right? I turn the light back down. Like that's sometimes the light reflects things. Sometimes the light exposes our sin. While the light is a source of joy, it may also light up things that bring us down. So why is all of that significant? Because in our text, Jesus comes along and he makes an absolutely astounding claim. Verse number 12, if you'll look at it with me. Again, Jesus spoke to them. saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. There is so much in this verse. You can't just blow past this and think it's some little cute child's metaphor. So much in this verse. Is this a metaphor that Jesus is using to proclaim himself as God? Absolutely. But this is also one of those you had to be there moments to fully grasp what he's saying and what's going on. So skip down to verse 20, and this will give us some context of the scene that this is happening in. These words he spoke in the treasury as he taught in the temple, but no one arrested him because his hour had not yet come. So John is a little surprised and stunned here that no one doesn't take action and arrest Jesus after him saying this. So what's fully going on? Because if you understand fully what's going on here, you would be amazed that that at least someone didn't come up and try to choke him out based on what he's doing, okay? Now, back in verse 12, it starts with the word again. This is, John, the author, he uses this word as if to insinuate a continuation from something that he's mentioned before. Remember from last week, John 7:53 through John 8:11 is very likely to have been placed in the wrong location. We talked about this. You can go back and watch online to capture the full explanation of this. And there's an asterisk and parenthetical statement in your Bible and most translations that explain this. But essentially, they did not find this section in a lot of the older manuscripts. It is my belief that they found a fragment. They knew it was true. They could authenticate its accuracy, but they didn't know who wrote it or what gospel it went into. And so they shoved it right in the middle of John. And it sort of doesn't make a lot of sense with the other narrative that's going on, okay? So what we're talking about today, is in all respects a continuation of what was going on in the temple that we covered 2 weeks ago. And it's apart from the woman caught in adultery, okay? So if you go back to chapter number 7 and you look at verse 37, let's read it. On the last day of the feast, the great day, Jesus stood up and he cried out. That means he yells when he preaches. See? Okay? If anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. So, as a reminder, Jesus is at the Feast of Booths, or the Feast of Tabernacles. There was a guy on the internet that said Jesus is coming back this week because this was the week of the Feast of the Tabernacles. Didn't happen, did it? It's false prophet. Never believe anybody that says they know the date and the time and the return of Jesus Christ. All right? So he's at the Feast of Booths and the Feast of Tabernacles. This feast went on for several days. It occurred at the end of the harvest season. It was done to remember and commemorate the Israelites' exodus from Egypt and through the wilderness. Part of what they did is they would live in tents to remind them of what it would essentially be like for their ancestors living in temporary dwellings in the desert during the Exodus. Sort of their version of a week-long camping trip, okay? Now, they had several things that went on in the ceremony, but there were two significant things that they did, two ceremonies. They'd have a water ceremony. So this is what they do. They bring out all of their supplies of water. Remember, we're in the middle of the desert. You can't just go to the faucet and have running water. You had to go to the well and dip it out. It was scarce. So they took all of their water and they would pour it out. And it would remind them of the thirst of their ancestors in the wilderness and God providing from them miraculously from a rock. So following that ceremony, the water ceremony, he says this in verse 37, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. So he is using their physical thirst to connect to the dots to their spiritual thirst. And that their spiritual thirst can be eternally quenched in himself if they partake in the living water, which he provides, which is a metaphor for salvation. Then watch what he says next, verse 38. Whoever believes in me, as the scriptures has said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water. So the promise is not only do you receive this living water, but you then become a source for this living water, holding on to the proclamation of the gospel. Okay, so now, back to where you're at today. One of the other things that they did that were significant was a lamp ceremony. Where they did this lamp ceremony traditionally was by the treasury, which is where Jesus is at. I know the treasury sounds like a bank or a cool room with cold bars and lots of cash, but it wasn't. The treasury, they did store some things in the treasury like gold, but it wasn't fancy. The main precipice of the treasury was these offering receptacles, okay? There were, I believe, 13 of them. They were in the shape of an upside-down trumpet. And so what people did is they went down the line of the offering receptacles, and each of them were for a particular fund. And so they would come and they would put money into these upside-down trumpet-looking receptacles for each of the elements of the temple, and they would walk down until essentially they ran out of money, okay? The location of the offering plates, these offering receptacles, was in what's called the court of the women. And so I have a picture up here of the temple, and it's a little bit hard to see, but the red box in the middle is essentially where the court of the women would have been located. Now, why did they call it the court of the women? This was as far as women were allowed to go in the temple. They could not enter into the inner parts. Okay, and so because of this, most of the families were located in this area before the Jewish men would step into the inner parts of the court for the other elements of the worship. And then the Levites even further, and then the high priest, okay? And so in the court of women, this is essentially would have been the most populated area with a lot of the families. The kids would have been there, that sort of thing. In the lamp lighting ceremony, this is not just we lit a incandescent bulb, okay? They had 4 large candelabras. You guys know what a candelabra is? It is a candle stalk that essentially has those cool little branches that come off of it like this. So they had 4 huge candelabras, okay? They would light these things, and the flames would get so big that it would come up to the top part of the temple walls. And it was said to put off so much light that it would illuminate the sky, especially if you had a low-laying cloud line. So you know when you're on the highway and you're driving in, you see a city in the distance, and you see kind of a glow of the lights of the city above that. That's what Jerusalem would look like from a distance, from the light of the candelabras being lit up in this place. And so they lit these places, and then when they lit it, people went nuts. They went nuts. They grabbed these torches, these handheld torches, and they ran around like it was the final night of an old school Pentecostal tent reunion. Like this party was fire, quite literally. The Jewish commentary on the law called the Mishnah said this: men of piety and good works used to dance before them with burning torches in their hands, singing songs and praises, and countless Levites played harps, lyres, cymbals, and trumpets and instruments of music. You had like distinguished men that was very prim and proper during the day. And these dudes became party animals as soon as those candelabras came on. And they just went crazy. And these guys would dance, and these people would dance almost all night long until the sun came up. What's the significance of this party? Again, it commemorated the Israelites' journey out of Exodus, and particularly the pillar of fire. So what's the significance of the pillar of fire? Well, you have to go back with me to what the pillar of fire did. Put your finger in John chapter 8. Go with me to Exodus chapter 13, all right? We're going to look at what they're commemorating. And trust me, we're going to do some work here, but this work is worth it, because once you do the work, the revelation of Jesus being the light of the world just blows you away. But you got to do the work first. So, Exodus chapter 13, verse 21. This is what they're commemorating in the temple, okay? And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night. And the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from before the people. So the Israelites are moving along. All of a sudden, something appears in the sky, and it takes on the appearance of a cloud. The cloud ends up serving several purposes. It leads God's people where God wants them to go. So essentially, the cloud goes before them. Wherever the cloud goes, they follow that cloud, okay? Another thing that it does is it protects them from the desert sun. So the cloud would actually rest over them when they would encamp. When they would set up their camp, set up the tabernacle, set up their tents, and they would essentially stay put for a little while, the cloud would hover above them, protect them from the heat of the sun. At night, the cloud did this really cool thing where the cloud started illuminating and started glowing from the inside to the point where it appeared like a pillar of fire. Now, what's so interesting about this is at night, they no longer need shelter from the sun. The sun is now rotated out of the picture. They don't need protection from the sun, but they do need light. And so the cloud would illuminate to provide light for them so they can continue traveling, so they would be safe, that sort of thing, okay? Now, if you think that's cool, it gets even better. Go to chapter 14, verse 19. Then the angel of the Lord who was going before the host of Israel moved and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them, coming between the hosts of Egypt who were chasing them down, trying to kill them. These are the Israelites' enemies who had enslaved them for hundreds of years. They're trying to go and say, hey, we actually changed our mind. We don't want to let you go. So they're trying to chase them and bring them back. And so the cloud rests in between the Egyptians who were chasing them and the Israelites. And there was the cloud and the darkness, and it was lit up in the night without one coming near the other all night. And then down in verse 24, and in the morning, watched the Lord in the pillar of fire and of cloud, looked down on the Egyptian forces and threw the Egyptian forces into a panic, clogging their chariot wheels so that they drove heavily. And the Egyptians said, let us flee from before Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians. So that this cloud by day, pillar by night, turns into a war machine. You guys don't get excited about that stuff, I guess. Like, this thing turns into a war machine. Like, not only does this thing, like, stay there all day, but it turns into this big glowing ball of fire at night, but it's a pew, 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 takes off the Egyptians and kills God's enemies. This is the coolest thing. That the same cloud descends on Mount Sinai later. And now this time when it comes down with thunder and lightning, and it comes down with a trumpet blast that keeps getting louder and louder. And in Exodus chapter 19, it says that all the people trembled at the cloud descending on the mountain. And it said smoke rose from it like a kiln, just bellowing smoke. And the people were warned, except for those who had been permitted to go up on the mountain. Moses, in particular, get the 10 Commandments. The people were warned, don't even set foot on the base of the mountain or you're going to die. You're going to die. And so the people had this awe and this fear, this cloud. It just, Exodus 40, the same cloud descended on the tabernacle. Okay, so what the tabernacle is, you guys remember, for those of you who are around, like we were a remote church when we started 8 years ago. We were a church plant. So we set up a temporary church at the rec center so we could have church. All right, and then at some point we were able to take this building and it was more permanent. So the tabernacle would have been their remote church. All right, it would have been sort of temporary structure for them to set up so they could be able to have services, and then they built a permanent structure, the temple, whenever they actually settled in the promised land. But for now, they're out in the middle of the desert, so they have a church plant. They have essentially a temporary holding place. The glory of the Lord in this cloud settled and filled the temple. It was so powerful that not even Moses, who was like God's prophet, his pastor of Israel at the time, not even Moses could enter into the structure. Now later when they have a permanent structure, in 1 Kings 8, the same cloud enveloped the temple to the point to where the priests, who were the Levites, the people, the ministers of God, they couldn't even be in there or minister. So thick and powerful, everyone just fell to the ground. Okay? So what's significant about all this? The cloud is God's immediate, manifest presence. He came down by day and protected them from the sun. By night, he was their light when the sun rotated out of the picture. The entire time, God guided them, protected them from the Egyptians, and enveloped their meeting place for worship as a way to put his stamp of approval and authentication on their place of worship. This was God's holy, manifest presence among his people. Every time they lit the candelabras and burned the lamps to the top of the temple, letting the night sky be enveloped in the light of the flames, it reminded them of the powerful presence of God. So this was an appropriate cause for celebration, because when they saw those fires, they said, God loves us, he protects us, he fights for us, he guides us, he's here with us. But every party comes to an end. At the end of the celebration, and that's where we're at, because John said it was on the last day of the celebration, they have to extinguish the candelabras. On the last day, the torches are put out, candelabras are extinguished, the decorations are removed. It's always a little bit sad. Even when you put on a celebration that isn't this significant, just in your life, a routine celebration, it's always sad when you got to tear down the decorations. So much excitement building up to the party. Why is it so sad to tear down the decorations? Because you're never going to have this celebration again. There's only going to be one 2-year-old birthday party. There's only going to be one 1-year-old birthday party. All the parents in the room. There's only going to be one graduation party. And when the decorations come down, it's never going to happen again. There's only going to be one 20-year anniversary party. And so there's a reason to celebrate, but then every celebration come to an end. It's a little sad and depressing, but here's what made it infinitely more sad and depressing for them. Every time the fire was extinguished in the temple, the dark, smoldering lamps that had been put out reminded them that the cloud of God's glory hadn't been seen in the temple for centuries. They hadn't even had a prophet for 500 years. The fire was fun, but it's just a picture of the real thing. It's like looking at pictures of the Grand Canyon on Google search as opposed to going there. It's not the same thing. They wanted the real thing. Something to celebrate that was right in front of them, not just partying about something that happened centuries ago. So while they were putting out the torches, Jesus steps right in the middle of all of it and says, I am the light of the world. Do you see now why John is stunned, why they don't want to take this guy and choke him and throw him in jail? It's preposterous, unless it's true. What he's saying is the thing that you have longed for and that you're looking for, and you guys are all downcast because it's the end of the celebration, it's me! I'm here! When he says, I am the light of the world, he's saying, I'm the cloud by day that protected your ancestors from the sun. I'm the fire by night that gave you light in the middle of the darkness. I am the cloud that descended on Mount Sinai and gave you the law. I am the glory cloud that settled on the tabernacle and the temple. What you seek is not man-made fire out of a torch. It's me. What you celebrate isn't an ancient story. It's me. It's a person. You're disappointed that the fires of the celebration are going out, but the real light is standing before you, and my fire never goes out. I am the very glory of God that you've been seeking. You are in the presence of the Holy One. Could you imagine someone stepping in and saying that? When he makes this announcement, he is saying, I am the source of life. I am the creator and sustainer and provider of all life. Nothing lives or breathes without my permission. I hold the power of death and life in the palm of my hands. He is saying, I'm the ultimate source of truth. I am the one true God whom you are looking at. Everything that is true and lovely is wrapped up in the character of who I am. He is saying, I am the source of joy. None of what you are looking for to fulfill you can be found outside of me. He is saying, I am the way. The only way you get to the Father is through me. John chapter 14, verse 6, Jesus said to them, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. The sun of which you have worshipped, the moon of which you have worshipped, the earth of which you have worshipped, the prophets you have revered, the kings and the rulers you have regarded as divine. They are nothing in themselves. I made them. They reflect my glory. He's saying, when he says, I'm the light of the world, he's saying that anything that is beautiful is just a reflection of the glory of the Creator. And Jesus is stepping in front of them and saying, I am that glory. Hebrews 1:3, he is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high. Man, we humans, man, we spend so much money going to beautiful places and striving for beautiful bodies and searching for beautiful people. We love to look at beautiful things. But none of those things possess beauty in themselves. They all receive it from somewhere. Because they all eventually fade and die. Christ is saying, I am what is beautiful. I've made all things to reflect the image of the invisible God. And I am the one who stands before you. So when you see them, you see him. When you see me, you see him. Jesus is saying, I and the Father are one. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And I am the light that never goes out. Why are you depressed? The candelabras are extinguished, but I'm the light. Even more interesting, Jesus isn't just the way, the truth, and the life, and the true source of joy. He is our mediator. 1 Timothy 2:5, for there is one God, and there is one mediator between God and men, that man, Jesus Christ. The fire is amazing, but you can only come so close. Dropping that s'mores over a big bonfire is a lot of fun, unless you hang your hand a little too low or you stay in there a little bit too long. The fire is amazing. It looks amazing. It's so cool, but you can only get so close. The sun is amazing, but you can't even look at it for a long time or it'll turn you blind. When you are on the right side of the cloud, it protected you, but on the wrong side, it destroys you. When the cloud descended on Sinai, even touching the foot of the mountain would cause immediate death. Entering the Holy of Holies, the manifest presence of God was in the Holy of Holies. Entering the Holy of Holies outside of the strict commands of the law would stricken the high priest to certain death. The light is something we desire, but simultaneously, we can't get too close to it. Now Moses comes along and he says, the desire of every human heart desires after God. He says, this is not enough for me. I don't want to just see the light. I want to get in the light. I want to be consumed by the light. Moses said, I want to see God face to face. I want more. I want more. I don't want to just be near the presence of God. I want to be in the presence of God. God said, you can't, Moses, or you'll die. You know why? Because you have no mediator. You have no mediator. Just as a person cannot stare at the sun unless they have special glasses, a mediator, you cannot look directly into holiness and survive. It'll not just burn your retinas, it will consume you entirely. This isn't the sun we're talking about. This is greater than any sun, any star in any universe. This is a greater power than every sun combined. This is the power that gives power to those suns. This is greater than any power. It is the source of all power. You can't just look into it or else it will consume you without a mediator. The reason why the light is so bright is it's holy. It's pure holiness. A sinner cannot come anywhere near the light because we will be utterly consumed by the purity, power, and holiness of an infinite God. It's a true beauty to behold, but it becomes dangerous when exposed to a sinful being. Now watch how God responds to Moses when he requests to see him face to face. This is what he does. Exodus 33:21. The Lord said, behold, there is a place by me where you shall stand on the rock. And while my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand as I pass until I have passed by. Then I will take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen. Moses didn't have a mediator, so God uses his hand in a rock to shield him. God passes by, but Moses still doesn't get what he wants. He still doesn't see God face to face. It's impossible without a mediator. And that's the problem of every human being. That's the problem every one of us have. We see the beauty, but we cannot receive it into ourselves. We can pass by it, but we cannot immerse ourselves in it. Now, there are tons of people that are pagans and practice nature worship that believe you can absorb the elements of nature into yourself, bringing its energies and its power and its vibes into oneself. But these people are all under a great delusion. All of them die, none of them live. They aren't absorbing the beauty of nature or the life of nature. They are worshiping a created thing. They may falsely think that they're absorbing life from nature, but they grow old and die with everyone else, proving that they don't draw anything from nature because nature is not the source of life. It's just a reflection of the source of life, its creator. Every person that stares up into the sky and watches sunset is still decaying and growing old. You can behold the beauty, but you cannot absorb it. Thinking that you can is missing the point. The beauty of creation is merely reflecting the glory of an eternal God. But humanity is still left with a problem. Because of sin, no one can get close to God lest they die. So this beauty that we behold, that we want to see face to face, we can't get close to it. Being sinners means that we're enemies, rebels, guilty of treason. A holy and infinite God cannot possibly enter the presence of fallen man. Until now. The light of the world, Jesus Christ, shows up on the scene, the source of joy, the source of life, and our mediator. He is the rock that shielded Moses from the power of God's glory. His atonement covers us like the most powerful umbrella in the world, that we can stand in the presence of God now and not be overwhelmed. And not only will we not die, but we can now take his life into ourselves and live forevermore. Now, how can Jesus stand before them? If he's God, how can he stand before them and them not be consumed? How can he stand in the court of the women in the temple in this closed-in space? How can he do that and them not be utterly consumed? Because his glory is veiled by human flesh. The incarnation has made it possible for them to stand in Jesus' presence and not die. His glory is encapsulated in human flesh. But even though his glory is veiled, for their safety, you can still see God's glory on display through the acts of Jesus. When he raises the dead, calms the storm, heals a person. That's the glory of God on display, just veiled in human flesh. Most notably, you see it in an event that has already happened chronologically, but John did not cover it in this gospel. It's called the Mount of Transfiguration. If you wish, turn there with me, Matthew chapter 17. This is one of the most profound and important elements that happened in the life of Jesus. Matthew 17, verse 1. It is covered in the other three Gospels, the Synoptic Gospels. It is not covered in this one. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, his three closest bros, and led them up a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses, been dead for hundreds of years, and Elijah, been dead for hundreds of years, talking with him. And Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, because it's a Feast of Tabernacles. One for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. Essentially, Peter's saying, I don't want to leave this moment. I want you all to stay. What we're dealing with right now, I want this to stay. Let's stay. Build a tent. Stay here for a little while. He was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. There's the cloud. And a voice from the cloud said, This is my beloved Son with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell on their faces and were terrified. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, Rise and have no fear. And when they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. And as they were coming down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, Tell no one the vision until the Son of Man is raised from the dead. Look at what happens here. Jesus takes 3 of his closest disciples on the top of the highest mountain in the Jerusalem area. He unveils like Superman, only times a million in infinity. He reveals a part of his unveiled glory, and just a little bit that he unveils, his face shone like what? The sun. His clothes were white. And guess what shows up again? The cloud. The cloud that they hadn't seen for centuries arrives back on the scene. the Father's immediate, manifest, concentrated presence. All of a sudden, Moses, been dead for hundreds of years. Elijah, been dead for hundreds of years. They show up. They're just shooting the breeze with Jesus. This is mind-blowing. Jesus, who is not subject to time and space like we are, unveils a small portion of his glory, and in that moment, they transcend time. This is not some Star Wars holographic image thrown up on the thing. This is literally Moses, literally Elijah. In this moment, they transcend time, bringing the past, the present, and the future into one moment on top of the highest mountain in Israel. Moses representing the law, Elijah representing the prophets, the disciples representing the apostles of the new covenant, and Christ at the center of it all, foreshadowing the glory of his future return, of which some theologians believe might happen on this mountain. So Jesus pulls back a veil of his flesh, and in a moment of time, boom, past, boom, present, boom, future. Jesus is displaying a glimpse of the past, present, and future glory. His earthly ministry is a climax of the fulfillment of the law, Moses, the prophets, Elijah. It's merged with the mission of the New Testament apostolic church in the disciples. And it points to the hope of his glorious return when he sets all things right and he returns and descends on earth to redeem all things to himself. Man, if that doesn't get you pumped up, I don't know what will. This is one of the coolest moments in the Bible where everything just seems to come together. Now, look at verse 3. It says they were talking. Luke, not Matthew, but Luke says they were talking about his departure in the Greek. That's why it's important to always get a good Greek dictionary, get a Greek lexicon, and look at what the Greek word says. The word departure is exodus. They were talking about Jesus' exodus, and then the cloud from Exodus descends on them. And then the Father speaks from the cloud. But notice something. The cloud didn't hang in the sky at a distance. It didn't sit on top of a mountain with the threat to not touch it. It says, in one gospel, it says, the cloud came and overshadowed them. And in another gospel, it says, they entered the cloud. This didn't happen in the Old Testament. The disciples were very aware that you didn't go anywhere near the glory cloud. You want to know why those guys fell on their faces, petrified in fear? Because they knew the cloud coming near them was imminent death. And then when the cloud started descending, they knew they were going to die. But they didn't die. How could they not die while being enveloped by the manifest presence of God? Because he who stood in the cloud with them was their mediator. Now they could enter God's presence because of Jesus Christ. Jesus means they can now fully enter God's presence, find the fullness of joy and of peace and of love, and be utterly consumed with the everlasting life of the Creator and not be harmed. Jesus is not just the cloud. He's the whole Exodus. He's the lamb that was slain so they could exit their life of sin in Egypt. He was the judge that brought the plagues, which was a brutal attack on all of Egypt's false gods. He was the rock that they struck so that they could drink of the eternal water. He was the bread of manna that fell from heaven. He was the rock that Moses hid behind so that he wouldn't die. The glory can now come in us, and we can enter in, and it won't kill us because Jesus paid for our sin. And now the very beauty that we behold, that we need and crave for, will not kill us because we're shielded by the work of the cross. Not the sun, not the moon, not the stars, something infinitely better, the creator of all those things, the Son of God, Jesus Christ. Now, to the unbelieving Pharisees and anybody here that rejects Christ, He responds in verse 21. And he said to them, I'm going away, and you will seek me, and you will die in your sin. Where I'm going, you cannot come. If you don't have the mediator, the presence of God will kill you. And if it hasn't yet, it will on Judgment Day. But to those who gaze upon the light of the world and believe, he says, Hebrews 4:16, let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Now, I want you to go back to what he said in verse number 12. Remember, I told you not to blow past this verse. Go back to verse 12, okay? Again, Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. Have, in English and Greek, is a word of possession. If you are a Christian, you possess the light of Christ inside you. That doesn't make you some Superman. Okay? You're still a fallen human being. No credit or glory goes to you. You can't walk around with your chest puffed out thinking you're big and bad. But the light of Christ is now your possession. Don't believe me? Believe the scriptures. Philippians 2:15, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. Man, do you understand this? The light that the Israelites could not come to lest they die. The light that the sun couldn't even produce. The light that is so powerful, so holy, so pure. You now possess in you. I don't think you get it. We should be like those Israelites with the torches running around. Woo! Like, do you understand? The light that they craved to be able to touch, but they just had to look from afar. The light that they couldn't even have access to for centuries resides in you. What do you do with that? I'll tell you what you do with that according to the scripture. Matthew 5. You are the light of the world. This is coming from your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. This is coming from the scriptures of which you walk by and believe in. You, he's talking to you. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Man, it kind of changes the nature of this when you do the theological footwork of all of this. Kind of changes and expands your understanding. This isn't some little cute child's metaphor song anymore, is it? So much bigger than that. This light is not some little night light. Blink. This is the beaming presence of God. And you are a card-carrying transporter of his imminent, holy, powerful presence. That's why you can't just do anything with your body that you want. That's why you can't just say what you want and do what you want and look at what you want. How profane to defile this body that carries the beaming presence of the light of God inside of us. The thing that the Israelites craved to touch but never could because they didn't have a mediator. Now you have one. Do you understand what's inside of you? Oh man, not to your credit. Not to my credit. I have, left to me, I'd screw everything up and I'd always run to sin. That's my flesh. That's your flesh. But with God inside, greater is he that is in than is in the world. It's not some cute little children's fairy tale. It's real. And it lives inside of you. So why are you sitting on it? And why are you running around acting like it's a little nightlight? Let the beaming presence of God shine forth. Jesus does not give you an option. He commands you. Let your light shine. Father, we thank you.